Hello, good afternoon from Finland, and sun is shining. Just came behind the trees. Warmly welcome again, everybody. It's the third day, actually, already our workshop. But yesterday was the main day, and the day before was related to the new moon, what we should be still thinking because of the powerful new moon time. And yesterday we were talking something about also the words. How do we understand like demand? And that is something what I'm asking you still to contemplate. And now we don't dare to put time for saying hello to each other. If you just say hello via the chat, because we are going to have in about 45 minutes. Wonderful speaker, Glenn Mullen, and that's why we have to be in time for that. But a few things to remind you is about what was put forward, that we are writing together a little booklet. I was saying book, but I am thinking that maybe it's not going to be a book, it's going to be a little booklet for the glory of God. And the idea is, maybe I just read it. So we are inviting every participant during the workshop to write an imagined manifest, a part of the will of group for the coming new future, and thus to create a booklet for the glory of God, the new in spiritual opportunities, developing spiritual attitude which will lead to right human relations and shambhalic peace on earth. As we know, there are so many challenges for us, and we should be just taking our responsibilities and think about how we can help in this situation. When we are together, I don't think that we are so much sensing the urgency of the work, but when we are just looking outside from our circles, we can realize that how far things are from the point of balance, how far they are from the point of real brother and sisterhood. How do we treat each other? What are the conditions for the majority of humanity still? How we are privileged to have so much and too much in material sense. So that's why we never should forget that. And I am really grateful for everyone who is putting time constantly, daily, for continuous work. There are several means that one can work, and as said, group is the most important thing to understand. Everyone should be belonging to group, because that's the means of working at the moment when we think about hierarchical work. It's so lovely to see these treats, or what is that? It's not treat, hellos going on in the chat. So please, everyone, put your hello there. It's really lovely to see that. Good mornings, and are there any other afternoons from here, from Europe? And is it evening then for Southern Pacific. Yeah, put some, what is the time of the day for you? That would be nice to see as well. Yeah, so we are going to have today a little bit change program. We are going to have this opening meditation, and then we have a Glenmoulin, and we study a little bit about sound, which is it's very intricate studies, and it belongs to those parts of the work that is kept very secret. The studies of colors and sound are those, because they are directly related to Deva kingdom and the builders, and how we are building on this physical plane, and because it can be then used also for the very selfish means, and also creating forms which are not according to the plan. I'm just saying, this is really lovely. Lovely that you are putting your mornings and afternoons and everything. Maybe then, if there is Jessica after the meditation before Glenn, I think that would be nice to read those, because they are absolutely lovely. Okay, we actually have a little bit time. Jessica, are you there?
Yes.
Oh, great. Would you be so kind and read those?
Okay.
Highs. Yeah,
That's fun. Okay.
at ease.
Let's go back. Margot, hello. Santana, good morning from Aptos, California, USA. Hello from Atlanta. Michelle, hello from Atlanta, Georgia, USA. Margot, Denver here. Maria, hi, Desert Love from New Mexico, USA. Bustan says hello from Hanoi, Vietnam. Nesa, very good morning. Marianne, hello from south of Sweden, where the spring and new beginnings are shown everywhere. Anne, good morning. Blessings from Los Angeles. Mirna, hello from Zurich in Switzerland. Me, good morning, dear group from Edmonds, Washington. Kirsten, wishing you all a lovely afternoon from Aarhus, Denmark. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say that properly.
Or
Walter,
whose, yes.
Aarhus.
Yes.
Walter, hello again, everyone, with blessings and love from Seattle, Washington, USA, 6:30 a.m. here. Kira, hello from Deerfield Beach, Florida, US. Winnie, hi from Swedish springtime afternoon. Wonderful to be with you. Tanaidi, hello from Switzerland in the Alps at 1,632 meters. Oh, beautiful. Anil, good morning, dear group, brothers and sisters from Philadelphia. Margot, 7:30 a.m. Beautiful morning. Antoinette, good afternoon from South Africa, dear friends. Good to feel the group love in the field of the conference. Have fun. Urania, I'm sorry, Uriana, good morning. Beautiful souls from New Zealand at 1:40 a.m.
Oh my gosh. Oh, Oriana.
Good morning, blessings from Madison, Wisconsin. Oh, Ben Stock, good morning from New York. Good afternoon, good evening. Our spiritual awakening is sending shockwaves throughout creation. Mikhail, Vega blessings. Eva, good morning, sunshine. Hong Min, hello from Hanoi, Vietnam. Best wishes to our love group. Marina Christina, good morning from Arizona, Sonora Desert in Tucson, Arizona. The other way round. Ron, morning blessings from Phoenix, Arizona.
Mm, very nice. Thank you so much. Actually, we should be having that always when we start something. Okay, dear friends, again reminder about this our book For the Glory of God, FGG. Also send your most quotes that you has made some impact to you, or comforting you, inspiring you, or aphorism, some prayer, or whatever comes to your mind. And there can be several things. I try to now go a little bit out of the sun, because it comes really directly to my eyes, even though I love the sun. And mine is, this is something what I have loved all my life. That comes from John's Gospel. Jesus said, "The wind blows wherever it pleases. You hear its sound, but you cannot tell where it comes from or where it is going. So it is with everyone born of the Spirit." So let us go into our meditation and take your notebooks, because we will study now. We will try to learn. We will read today about how Tibetan is mentioning about the coming means for disciples, how we will advance. We will leave certain things behind, and now there is the science of contact that we have to learn. So this is one of those rehearsing meditations where we try to learn how we contact with our soul, and that is, of course, we mean the inner being. So maybe you have now your notebooks. And again, let us remind ourselves about these ebb and flows, what we have to learn in order to really work with the soul. The ebb and flow can be seen functioning in the process of death and incarnation. It can be seen also over the entire process of man's lives, for some lives can be seen to be apparently static and uneventful, slow and inert from the angle of the soul's experience, whilst others are vibrant, full of experience and of growth. This should be remembered by all of you who are workers when you are seeking to help others to live rightly. Are there, or are they on the ebb, or are they being subjected to the flow of the soul energy? Are they passing through a period of temporary quiescence preparatory to greater impulse and effort, so that the work to be done must be that of the strengthening and stabilizing in order to enable them to stand in spiritual being? Or are they being subjected to a cyclic inflow of forces? And that could be also thought through in our own lives. In this case, the worker must seek to aid in the direction and utilization of the energy, which, if misdirected, will eventuate in wrecked lives, but which, when wisely utilized, will produce a full and fruitful service. Then think, through their sacrifice, matter is lifted up into heaven. There are things to be understood about this law of sacrifice. that is the means how the soul is working. That is the first law. The angels who choose to die and in dying lived. Through their sacrifice, matter is lifted up into heaven. Tibetan talks about the solar angels, how the purpose of their being here is not actually humanity and not human being. Their purpose is solar logoic work, and human unit is for them a means how they are going to fulfill their part in that great work that they are taking a part in the solar logos. We have not been talking about that, I think, too generally, but it's interesting to remind oneself that that is the case. Okay, we now start our meditation, standing in our spiritual being. So sit erect and relaxed. Withdraw the consciousness inward in successive stages, using your creative imagination. The imagination is a creative activity producing definite inner changes. Upon this you can depend because it is one of the forces influencing substance itself, so it is always having effect upon the Devic life, and that is what we need to reach in order to uplift and learn to uplift the matter. Just have your imaginary journey. Tibetan writes in esoteric psychology. What therefore is individualization from the standpoint of the psychological unfoldment of man? It is the focusing of the lowest aspect of the soul, which is that of the creative intelligence, so that it can express itself through the form nature. It will eventually be the first aspect of divinity, thus to express itself. It is the emergence into manifestation of the specific quality of the solar angel through the appropriation by the angel of a seed or seeds, which thus constitute its appearance. It is the initial imposition of an applied directed energy upon that triple force aggregation, which we call the form nature of man. The individual on the way to full coordination and expression appears upon the stage of life. The self-aware entity comes forth into physical incarnation. The actor appears in process of learning his part. He makes his debut and prepares for the day of full personality emphasis. The soul comes forth into dense form and on the lowest plane. The self begins the part of its career, which is expressed through selfishness, leading finally to an ultimate unselfishness. The separative entity begins his preparation for group realization. A God walks on earth, veiled by the fleshly form, the desire nature and the fluidic mind. He is prey temporarily to the illusion of the senses, endowed with a mentality which primarily hinders and imprisons, but which finally releases and liberates. Think about that. the mentality which primarily hinders and imprisons, but which finally releases and liberates. Alignment. So now, withdraw from the physical brain. After definitely have been focusing your consciousness there, withdraw to the astral plane. Withdraw from the astral body to the mental body. From that point, recognize yourself as an integrated personality. And withdraw from the personality into the soul. Say, be still and know that I am God. Now stand in your spiritual being. Start your own communion. And we will be in silence about 8 minutes. Om. And now, dear friends, take your notebooks and write down your insights and your thoughts.
Today doesn't need to be easy to be sacred. Psalm 118 teaches you how to cross the threshold of a new day with gratitude. Not because every problem is solved, but because God is still good. Some of you woke up with pressure already waiting for you. This psalm gives you a better first response than fear. Give thanks. Lift your eyes. Let the Lord be your strength before the day tests you. This is the day the Lord has made, and you can walk into it with joy. Oh, give thanks unto the Lord, for He is good. His mercy endures forever, steady as it should. Let the house of God now say, His mercy remains. Let every heart that fears the Lord say, His love sustains. Out of mighty stress I called on the Lord, and He answered me. He brought me into a broad place. He gave my chest room to breathe. The Lord is on my side. I will not fear. What can man do unto me? When the Lord is here, He answered. This is the day the Lord has made. I will rejoice, I will be glad. The Lord is my strength and my song. He restored what I had. I will not start this day in fear. I will lift my thanks again. This is the day the Lord has made, and I will enter in. I will rejoice. Psalm 118 teaches a mature kind of gratitude. It thanks God before the full answer arrives. That means you do not need a perfect outcome to begin worship. You need a true confession. The Lord is on my side. So stop letting pressure write the first paragraph of your day. Give thanks first, pray first, stand first in mercy. Because gratitude is not denial. It is how faith enters the morning. I shall not die but live and declare His works. The Lord has chastened me sore, but He did not leave me there. Open to me the gates of righteousness. I will enter and give thanks. This is the gate of the Lord, where the upright advance. This is the day the Lord has made. I will rejoice, I will stand. He made room when I was pressed. will walk it in. Walk it in. The Lord says, stop entering your day like someone abandoned. Do this today. Speak Psalm 118 before you speak your fear. When anxiety says collapse, answer, I shall not die, but live. When your mind says hide, answer, open the gates. When pressure says panicked, answer, the Lord is on my side. I preserved you for this day. I will be your strength in it. So enter with thanksgiving, and let obedience be your first step. The stone the builders refused has become the cornerstone. This is the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous to behold. Blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord. We bless you from this place. The Lord is God, and he has given us life. So I will seek his face.
This is the day that's made, and I will not waste it. The Lord is my strength and my song, and I will praise him.
He is my light, my cornerstone, my mercy without end. This is the day the Lord has made, and I will walk as his friend without end.
Okay, dear friends, we had our morning meditation, morning for some, afternoon meditation for some, evening meditation for some. Michael, is Glenn here?
So I got a message from him.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. It was about 48 minutes ago,
Okay,
saying that he's having internet
problems.
problems. And I wrote back to him asking if he'll be able to join us soon, and I had not gotten a response yet.
Okay, dear friends, Glenn is in Tibet. I'm sorry, he is in Nepal at the moment, if I remember correctly. And so it looks like that he has problems there. While we are waiting for him, I will show you some video, and keep your thumbs up and send good technical devas to his direction, as we know that it's impossible sometimes, but we really, really hope that he is able to join. But we have anyway something else here. If he is, while we are waiting, hopefully he gets something done. Okay.
Imagine spending your entire life searching for something, only to discover it was never outside of you. Imagine praying, believing, following rituals, while the very truth you seek has always been silently waiting within your own awareness? What if everything you were taught about spirituality is only the surface? And what if Jesus was not teaching religion at all, but something far more profound, something that could completely change the way you see yourself, reality, and existence itself? In this video, you will begin to uncover a hidden dimension of Jesus' teachings, one that has been misunderstood, simplified, and in many cases, forgotten. And stay with me until the end, because the last revelation is the most powerful of all, and it may completely transform the way you understand life itself. If this kind of knowledge resonates with you, take a moment to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your interaction helps this message reach those who are ready to hear it. Now, let us begin. There is a reason why the teachings of Jesus have echoed across centuries, yet remain so deeply misunderstood. Most people see Jesus as the founder of a religion, a system, a structure, a path defined by rules, beliefs, and institutions. But what if this perspective is incomplete? What if Jesus was not pointing to an external system, but to an inner transformation? Scholars like Elaine Pagels, who studied the Gnostic Gospels, suggest that early interpretations of Jesus' teachings were far more focused on inner knowledge, what the Greeks called gnosis, direct knowing. Not belief, not obedience, but experience. This aligns with what Carl Jung later explored in his work on the psyche. The idea that true transformation comes not from adopting external doctrines, but from confronting and awakening the inner self. Jesus spoke in parables, not to confuse, but to reveal truths that cannot be understood intellectually alone. Those who have ears, let them hear. But hear what exactly? Not words, but awareness. Not commandments, but consciousness. Because hidden beneath the language of religion, there is a deeper message. A message about perception, about identity, about awakening. And here is where everything begins to shift. Because if Jesus was teaching consciousness, then religion, as most people understand it, was never the destination. It was only a doorway, a symbol, a shadow of something much greater. So let me ask you something. If the truth was never outside of you, why were you taught to look for it there? And more importantly, what happens the moment you stop searching and start observing? Because this is where the real teaching begins, and what comes next will challenge everything you think you know. There is something subtle, almost invisible, in the way Jesus spoke. He rarely gave direct answers. Instead, he pointed. He redirected attention, again and again, not outward, but inward. The kingdom of God is within you, not in temples, not in institutions, not in rituals, within. But what does that actually mean? If you pause for a moment and truly reflect, you may begin to sense that this statement is not symbolic, it is literal. Because what Jesus was pointing to is not a place, it is a state of awareness, a dimension of consciousness that exists beyond thought, beyond identity, beyond everything you were taught to believe you are. Philosophers like Meister Eckhart, centuries later, spoke of this same truth, describing a divine spark within the soul, something untouched by the external world, not created, not learned, but remembered. And here is where most people miss the message, because they try to understand it instead of experiencing it. They turn it into theology instead of transformation. They build systems around it instead of dissolving into it. Jesus never said, "Believe in me, and you will find the truth." He said, "Follow me," and this changes everything. Because to follow, it does not mean to worship. It means to embody, to walk the same path of awareness, to see what he saw, to perceive reality the way he perceived it. And what did he perceive? That the self most people identify with is not real, that the roles, the fears, the attachments are constructs of the mind. Carl Jung described this as the persona, the mask we wear to navigate the world. But beneath that mask, there is something deeper, something silent, something aware. And this is where Jesus was pointing, not to a new belief system, but to the collapse of all false identities. This is why his teachings were often unsettling, because they did not reinforce the ego, they challenged it. If anyone wants to follow me, let him deny himself. This was not about rejection, it was about transcendence. Not destroying who you are, but seeing through the illusion of who you think you are. And here comes a question that few people dare to ask. If everything you believe yourself to be is constructed, then who are you without it? Not your name, not your story, not your past, but the one who is aware of all of it. Because the moment you begin to observe instead of identify, something begins to change. A space opens, a silence emerges, and within that silence, something ancient begins to awaken. And what Jesus taught next goes even deeper into this mystery. There is a reason why Jesus spoke so often about seeing. Having eyes, do you not see? At first glance, it sounds like a simple question, but it is not, because he was not talking about physical sight. He was pointing to perception, to the way you interpret reality, moment by moment. Most people believe they are seeing the world as it is, but they are not. They are seeing the world through layers of conditioning, beliefs and fears, memories. What they call reality is, in truth, a projection. This idea is not new. Philosophers like Immanuel Kant argued that we never perceive reality directly, only our interpretation of it. And in modern psychology, this is reinforced by the understanding that the brain does not simply receive reality, it constructs it. But Jesus had already pointed to this long before. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eye is single, your whole body will be full of light. This statement has been interpreted in many ways, but beneath its symbolism, there is something precise. When perception is fragmented, divided by fear, judgment, and illusion, reality becomes distorted. But when perception becomes unified, when you see without distortion, something changes, not outside, but within. Because the world you experience is shaped by the state of your consciousness. This is why two people can live the same situation and experience completely different realities. One sees suffering, the other sees growth. One sees chaos, the other sees meaning. So the question is not, what is reality? But, how are you seeing it? And here is where Jesus' teaching becomes radical, because he was not asking people to change the world. He was asking them to awaken their perception, to see clearly, to remove the filters, to dissolve the illusions. This aligns deeply with what the Buddha later taught, that suffering arises not from reality itself, but from the way we perceive and attach to it. Different cultures, different languages, but the same underlying truth. And this leads to something even more unsettling. If your perception creates your experience, then everything you feel, everything you suffer, everything you fear, is being filtered, shaped, interpreted by your own consciousness. So let me ask you something. If you could see without distortion, without fear, without judgment, what would reality look like? And more importantly, who would you be within it? Because the next step in this journey is not about changing what you see, but about realizing who is the one seeing, and that realization that changes everything. At some point, if you follow this path deeply enough, you begin to notice something unsettling. There is a gap, a subtle distance and between you and your thoughts. At first it feels almost imperceptible, a brief moment where you are no longer fully inside the noise of the mind, but observing it, watching it. And this is where everything begins to shift. Because if you can observe a thought, then you are not that thought. If you can notice fear, then you are not that fear. If you can witness your emotions rising and falling, then there is something within you that remains unchanged. Something stable, something aware. This is what many spiritual traditions have pointed to across time. In Eastern philosophy, it is often described as the witness. In the teachings of Advaita Vedanta, it is the pure awareness that exists prior to identity. And in modern psychology, Eckhart Tolle refers to it as presence, the state of being fully aware of the now. But long before these interpretations, Jesus hinted at the same truth. I am not of this world. This was not a statement of separation from reality, but a recognition of a deeper identity. Not the body, not the personality, not the narrative, but the awareness behind all of it. And here lies one of the most misunderstood aspects of his teachings. When Jesus said, "I am," he was not only referring to himself as an individual, he was pointing to a universal principle of consciousness, the same "I am" that exists within you, the same presence that silently observes your thoughts and your experiences, your life unfolding. This is why in moments of stillness, you can feel something beyond words, a sense of being, not doing, not becoming, just being. And yet, most people never stay there long enough to recognize it, because the mind quickly returns, with its stories, its fears, its need to define and control. And so, they lose contact with that deeper awareness, again and again. But what if that awareness is the very key Jesus was pointing to? What if awakening is not about acquiring something new, but about recognizing what has always been there? This idea resonates with the work of Alan Watts, who often spoke about the illusion of the separate self, and how the sense of individuality is more like a role than a fixed identity. A process, not a thing. So let me ask you, if there is a part of you that can observe everything, then who are you and really? The thoughts, or the one who sees them? Because once this question becomes real, not intellectual, but experiential, you begin to step out of the illusion and into something far more profound. And what comes next challenges even the deepest assumptions about who you think you are. There is a moment, subtle, almost silent, where everything you believed about yourself begins to loosen. Not because someone convinced you, not because you adopted a new belief, but because you started to see, truly see. And when that happens, something unexpected occurs. You realize that the self you have been protecting, defending, improving, is not as solid as you thought. It shifts, it reacts, it changes depending on circumstances, people, and time. This is what ancient traditions have always pointed out. The self, as most people understand it, is not a fixed entity. It is a construction, a narrative continuously shaped by memory and perception. David Hume, the philosopher, once argued that the self is nothing more than a bundle of perceptions, constantly changing, never the same. And in modern neuroscience, this idea is echoed again. The sense of identity is not located in one place, but emerges from processes in the brain. But Jesus approached this from a completely different angle. He did not analyze the self. He invited people to see beyond it. Whoever loses his life will find it. At first, this sounds paradoxical, even contradictory, but within this statement, there is a profound insight. Because the life you are asked to lose is not your existence. It is your attachment to the identity you think you are, your story, your labels, your need to control how you are seen and who you must be. And here is where fear arises, because if you are not your identity, then what remains? Silence, presence, awareness. And for many, that feels like emptiness, but it is not. It is space. A space where something deeper can emerge, something not conditioned, not reactive, not bound by the past. This is why spiritual awakening often feels like a loss before it feels like freedom. You lose certainty, you lose control, you lose the illusion of a fixed self. But in that loss, you begin to discover something else, something that was never constructed and therefore cannot be destroyed. And this is where the teaching of Jesus becomes incredibly radical. Because he was not offering comfort to the ego, he was inviting its transcendence, not to make you stronger as a person, but to show you that what you truly are is beyond the person. So let me ask you something. If everything you call yourself can change, then what is it that never changes? What is it that has been present in every moment of your life, watching, experiencing, aware? Because when you begin to notice that, you're no longer just living your life, you are witnessing it. And from that place, a different kind of freedom begins to emerge. And what comes next reveals why this freedom was never meant to be controlled, but lived. There is something paradoxical about freedom. Most people spend their lives trying to control everything, their future, their image, their outcomes, believing that control will bring peace. But if you look closely, it rarely does. Because the more you try to control life, the more tension you create within yourself. And this is exactly where Jesus introduced one of his most misunderstood teachings. Do not worry about tomorrow. At first it sounds like simple advice, almost naive, but it is not. Because this is not about neglect. It is about presence, about releasing the illusion that the mind can secure the future and returning to the only place where life is actually happening. Now, philosophers like Søren Kierkegaard spoke of anxiety as the result of being trapped between past and future, never fully present. And modern psychology confirms this. The mind constantly projects, anticipates, fears what has not yet happened. But Jesus pointed to something radically different. He invited people to step out of psychological time, to experience reality without the constant interference of mental projection. Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They do not toil. This is not about passivity. It is about alignment, a state where action arises naturally, without the weight of fear, without the burden of overthinking. And here is where the deeper layer reveals itself. Because when you are fully present, you are no longer acting from the conditioned self. You are acting from awareness, from clarity, from something that does not need to force or resist. This is what Taoist philosophy calls Wu Wei, effortless action, acting in harmony with the flow of existence rather than against it. Different language, different culture, but the same underlying truth. Jesus was not teaching people to escape life. He was teaching them how to live it without the distortion of fear and control. And yet, this is incredibly difficult for most people, because the mind constantly pulls you away from the present moment, into regrets, into expectations, into imagined scenarios. So let me ask you, how much of your life are you actually living? And how much are you mentally rehearsing? Because the moment you become aware of this, you begin to see the trap. And in seeing it, you are already stepping out of it, even if just for a moment. And that moment is enough to glimpse a different way of being, a way that is not driven by fear, but guided by awareness. And what Jesus revealed next takes this understanding even further, into something that dissolves the boundary between you and everything you perceive. At the deepest level of Jesus' teachings, there is something even more radical, something that goes beyond identity, beyond perception, beyond presence itself. It is the dissolution of separation, because as long as you experience yourself as separate from life, there will always be conflict between you and others, between you and the world, even between you and yourself. But Jesus pointed to something entirely different. I and the Father are one. For centuries, this statement has been interpreted as something exclusive, something that applies only to Him. But what if that is not the case? What if this was not a declaration of superiority, but a revelation of unity, a truth about the nature of consciousness itself? Mystics across traditions have spoken of this same realization. In Sufism, it is described as the union with the divine. In Advaita Vedanta, it is the understanding that the individual self and the absolute reality are not separate. And in the work of philosophers like Baruch Spinoza, God is not an external entity, but the very substance of existence, everything. And if this is true, then the boundary you feel between you and the world is not as solid as it appears, because everything you experience, it appears within your awareness. Every sound, every sensation, every thought, all of it arises within the same field of consciousness. So where exactly is the separation? Is it in reality or in perception? This is what Jesus was pointing to again and again. Not a distant God, but an immediate presence. Not something to be reached, but something to be realized. And yet, the mind resists this, because the idea of separation is deeply ingrained. It defines identity. It creates the sense of me and other. But the moment this illusion begins to dissolve, something extraordinary happens. Fear starts to fade, because there is no longer another to defend against. Comparison loses its power, because there is no one to compete with, and a deep sense of peace begins to emerge. Not because life has changed, but because the way you experience it has. So let me ask you, if there is no true separation, then who are you as in relation to everything? Are you a part of reality, or are you the very awareness in which reality appears? Because the next step in this journey is not just about understanding this idea, but about living it, and that changes everything. If this understanding begins to take root, life no longer feels like something happening to you. It begins to feel like something unfolding through you. And this subtle shift changes everything, because when you no longer see yourself as separate, you no longer act from fear, but from clarity, from compassion, from a deeper intelligence that does not come from thought, but from awareness itself. This is why Jesus emphasized love more than any doctrine. Love your neighbor as yourself. At first, it sounds like a moral instruction, a rule to follow. But within this statement, there is a hidden insight. Because it does not say, love your neighbor as someone separate from you. It says, as yourself. And this only makes sense if, at the deepest level, there is no real separation between you and the other. What you do to another, you are, in a sense, doing to yourself, not as a belief, but as a consequence of unity. This is why true compassion cannot be forced. It emerges naturally, when the illusion of separation dissolves. Philosophers like Arthur Schopenhauer recognized this, suggesting that compassion arises when we see ourselves in others, not metaphorically, but fundamentally. And modern neuroscience supports this idea, through the discovery of mirror neurons, showing that at a biological level we are wired to resonate with the experiences of others, different disciplines, different languages, but pointing to the same truth. That connection is not something we create. It is something we uncover. And yet, most people try to love from the ego, from expectation, from need, from fear of loss. And this creates attachment, not love. But when awareness deepens, love becomes something else entirely. It becomes a state of being, not dependent on conditions, not limited to specific people, but flowing, naturally, from presence itself. And this is where Jesus' teaching reaches a level that few truly grasp. Because he was not teaching how to behave, he was revealing what you become and when you awaken. So let me ask you, is your love something you give, or something you are? Because the final step in this journey is not about learning anything new, but about realizing what has always been true. And this final realization is the one that changes everything. There comes a moment when all the seeking begins to fade, not because you found all the answers, but because you realized you were asking the wrong questions. For so long you searched outside, in teachings, in systems, in interpretations created by others, believing that truth was something distant, something to be reached. But what if the final realization is this? There was nowhere to go, nothing to become, nothing to add, only something to remember. Jesus did not come to create followers of a religion. He came to awaken a realization, a direct knowing, that what you are at your core is not separate from truth, is not separate from life, is not separate from what many call God. The kingdom of God is within you, not as a metaphor, but as a revelation. Because what you have been seeking is the very awareness reading these words right now, silent, present, unchanging, and yet so often overlooked. This is why, in the end, all teachings dissolve, all concepts fall away, all identities lose their grip, because truth is not something you hold, it is something you are. Philosophers like Jiddu Krishnamurti spoke about this with striking clarity, saying that truth is a pathless land. It cannot be organized, taught, or contained within any system. And this echoes what Jesus was pointing to all along, not a structured belief, but a direct experience, not something to follow blindly, but something to awaken within yourself. So let me ask you one final question. If everything you have been searching for is already within you, at what is left to seek and what happens? The moment you stop searching and simply become aware. Because in that moment, without effort, without striving, you may begin to glimpse something profound, a stillness, a presence, a quiet certainty that does not need validation. And from that place, life is no longer a problem to solve, but a mystery to experience, not with fear, but with awareness. Not with resistance, but with clarity. And perhaps this was the true teaching all along, not religion, not doctrine, but consciousness, alive within you, waiting, not to be found, but to be recognized.
Shall we say, wow, that is fantastic. And Michael was putting the link for that because this is so rich and could be listened many times. All that what was expiring for you, please write down, because that could be used in our booklet. And there were so many profound statements that I was thinking that I will remember that. But what sign is expressed here? Of course, many, but there is one fundamental sign related to this all. You can put that into the chat box about identity. Aquarius, Leo, yes. That's the thing about, of course, this, we can say Leo, Aquarius, exactly. When we are thinking, what is the work in Leo, is about finding the lower self. He is hunting it. And then we become who we are. And this was all about who we are. And it has to be recognized. And this whole thing, when we travel via the lower mental plane, what we need to do, but still it is this prison. And then when we go over the higher mental plane, that becomes for us the means to resolve things, to have revelation about ourselves. And what was there in the end? There were so many things that I was thinking that should be put into our book to reveal the future for us. So if you were reading, Glenn has sent me a note that he could not do that because of the internet problems. He is going to be still in Nepal, in my understanding, during the main conference, so we will try to work around this if that is possible. We will communicate with him, but the group has been there has been behind the scenes really group work, that Stasia has been sending a link to one of the Glenn's talk, and actually we should be discussing about that, because that was I was thinking to show you this a little bit later. And compliments too. Yeah, so but we will leave it now. Michael, are you ready to show it? Is it ready to go?
Yes.
Okay, that is wonderful. So we welcome Glenn. I wanted to just tell you about him because he is a really amazing person. I think that we met with Michael Glenn 2011, if that was the year when it was this Washington D.C., the Kalachakra initiation, and there we met, or I met him first time. And if you study his life, it's incredible. It cannot be, said in even 10 sentences, because he's in constant traveling. For instance, when I was communicating about this day, he was in Canada, he was in Korea, he was in Israel, he was somewhere in Europe, again back to Canada, and then to, I think, was it via India to Nepal? But anyway, now should be in Nepal. And he has been writing incredibly many books. Please study his bio. And what is amazing about that, his books has been nominated many times. There is the 14 Dalai Lamas, and then the female Buddhas, which were winning those awards. And I think this the female Buddha I tried to find some years ago, and I couldn't find it, so it was out of print, and I wanted to ask that from him, what books are available. But let us welcome Glenn and send our love to him via the ethers, and welcome him then when he can. And now we welcome his video. I don't know what's the name of it. But anyway, that is fantastic. Thank you, Stacia. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Michael, for doing this.
My own training began in India in the early 1970s. I had met some students of the Dalai Lama's older brother who had become a professor in Indiana, and they informed me that the Dalai Lama was opening a school for Western people in Dharamsala. So I traveled and studied there, and beginning in the early 70s, 1972. So at that time, all of the great lamas were all quite old, and they had escaped from Tibet, and they didn't speak any English. And after arriving in India, the Dalai Lama had sent some young tulkus to America, basically to learn English and come back and translate for them. So you could say the older teachers taught in a very formal, classical way, because that's the world they came from. And it was very beautiful and very heart-touching, you could say. Little slow, because I think in the Buddhist world in Tibet, they saw kind of growth as an organic unfolding, like a lotus unfolding as petals kind of thing. So it was kind of slower in terms of getting information. But in terms of the pacing, it made it very easy for the internalization, for the practice, you could say. The hours of meditation and application we had a bit of advantage. And then Dalai Lama, after his 1963 statement, had said, especially young lamas have to learn English and have to learn, not English, some foreign languages, and learn Western culture, because our services will be very important in this role for the next century. So he said it very clearly. So wherever Dharma has gone, Enlightenment tradition from India through various countries and cultures, it's always cross-fertilized with them and created something like, you could say, a fashion or a style or a texture, an aesthetic of its own, and quite successfully so in many, many countries. As it comes to the West, certainly it will fuse with various of our Western traditions. And I think lamas today, young lamas today, certainly don't have the depth of training of the old ones. And many of them, for instance, so say in the monasteries of Nepal, they really grow up in the city. Bodhanath now is completely a city. It's part of Kathmandu Valley and several million people living in that valley. So it's very different than growing up in a remote monastery in Tibet with no distraction. Of course, they all have smartphones and laptops and all of this. But I think nonetheless, those tulkus and those lamas, khenpos and geshes who have gone to Western universities, and mainly the ones who studied psychology in university, people like Trungpa, Sogyal Tulku and so forth, they weren't terribly well trained as young tulkus, but that may have been to their advantage because they had to drink deeply of what they had received, and going to Western universities, British universities, learning psychology, pop psychology, and really helped them linguistically to put Dharma into meaningful language. If we look at other movements, like in America, the Vipassana movements from Satipatthana and Vipassana movements from Thailand and Burma has largely been taught and practiced through psychology graduates, people like Jack Kornfeld and the such. And their training in Western psychology has given one of the better linguistic platforms for talking about Buddhism, talking about enlightenment. Because of course, enlightenment is really talking about transforming the mind into living with complete fulfillment within its physical body boat, if you will. And it's possible that all great teachers are some kind of emanation, you could say. And for that reason, Dalai Lama, when he started traveling in the West in the late 70s, after things had settled in India with the refugees, and he could get away from just organizing the refugee committees and creating helping to reestablish all the training systems and the schools for young people and all that. Whenever he traveled, one thing he requested in each city that he visited was there should be some kind of interfaith gathering. So usually it'd be him and whoever was the local cardinal and perhaps one of the archbishop of some Christian tradition. And if there were any Hindus around, that would be one of them would end up on stage and so on. And so Dalai Lama has always very much promoted that sense of the root of all traditions being positive and going in positive directions. The main problem I think you have with religions is governments will always try to use them to their own purposes. And institutions might become more important than the people in the institutions. And that's certainly happened in many, many cases with all traditions. In the West, Dharma will take its own shape and its own form. We could say that as the seeds of Dharma have traveled around the planet, they've sprouted with beautiful flowerings everywhere they have gone. And certainly at some point or another, there might be a little bit of an overgrowth, and some of those flowerings might be a little bit on the growing up in the shade, so to speak. But the Buddhist idea is Dharma will last 5,000 years. We're 1956 when the Dalai Lama first visited India for the celebration of the 2,500th year since Buddha's passing. Nehru Gandhi created that meeting, brought Buddhist masters from all over the world to celebrate the half-life of Buddhism, you could say. So when I first, one of my first meetings with Dalai Lama was about 20 or 30 people, and someone said, "Oh, well, it seems like the earth is coming to an end. And I said, and looks like humans are going to destroy them. And Dalai Lama goes like this, with this earth? They said, well, according to our prophecy, 2,500 years. He said, but certainly we'll have some ups and downs. And I think that's very true. I think we are just past the halfway point. And sometimes something I often say is every 500 years, Dharma changes. And this is a prophecy of Buddha. He said the 500 years comes in, the 5,000 years comes in 10 500-year chapters. And the halfway point started in 1956, the next chapter, which will be the 6th chapter. And the 6th chapter, according to the Buddha's prophecy, is his Dharma spreads flowers in the West. And hopefully it will end the West's love for war, for violence, for killing, for arms manufacture and arms sales, for creating wars in foreign countries as ways of great profits in getting, selling your bombs and your guns and your airplanes and so forth. And often we say, Dharma is the way of peace. Of course, humans will never have complete peace, but they can learn to live in basic, a modicum, a healthy dose of peace.